Hello, my friends. This week I am reading some books about people essentially hitting rock bottom and going on an unhinged road trip to cope. I relate. I could do that. I could see that. I've thought about it? I think we all have. I fear, though, at this point in my life, I do not own a car. So the books that I'm reading this week are Bad Nature. This is a book about a woman who gets diagnosed with a aggressive form of breast cancer, and she's told that she has 6 months to live if she doesn't seek treatment. So she quits her job and decides to drive from New York to California to kill her father, who she doesn't like and was abusive growing up. I'm gonna be real, if I had 6 months to live and some vengeance in my heart, why not murder suicide someone? This is a joke. I'll also be reading Nevada, which is about a trans woman who goes on a cross-country road trip, meets this person who she believes is pre-transition and wants to act as their trans fairy godmother to help them, maybe come to terms with something a little bit faster than they would otherwise. Next, I'm reading Make Sure You Die Screaming, which is about an unnamed non-binary main character who is driving across the country to kidnap their father. I'm gonna be so real. I've already read all of the books. So here is my check-in after I finished Bad Nature. Hello, my friends. I just finished Bad Nature by Ariel Courage. So I did the audiobook for this one, switching it up. I finished it in less than a day. I've had a lot of work that I could do today that was like a little bit brainless, so I could play this book and listen to it while I was working. Don't look at my armpit. Disgusting. I'm going to try not to talk for 45 minutes about each book that I read. We'll see if I can succeed at that. I'm going to be going through the book, but I'm not going to be going over major spoilers, just plot points. So if you want to go in blind, you can skip to a little bit later in this video. So this book is about this woman who, she is named in the book, but I want to say maybe twice throughout the entire book, and the first time you hear her name is not until fairly far into the book, so I'm gonna call her our unnamed main character. She is 40, a incredibly successful lawyer with like loads of money and doing great for herself. She has this kind of like tragic backstory of an abusive father and then a mother who died while she was young, and she never really recovered from her husband leaving her despite him being abusive. She feels really abandoned by her father, despite him leaving being like the best thing that one could do as an abuser, but also not forgiving him for any of the abuse that he did or having the capacity to forgive him. She is in a lose-lose situation where no matter what happened with him, she was going to be filled with this rage, which fair. So she goes to her routine doctor's appointment, and the worst fear of every woman that I know happens. They are like, oh my god, you're gonna die in 6 months of breast cancer. Because that shit can just come out of nowhere. And so this kind of leads her on a journey across the country to her father in California, where she is going to kill him. It's something she's been saying since her father left, that she's going to kill her father, and everyone in her life has kind of wrote it off as like an angry girl, but no, she's fully planning on killing him. Throughout this road trip, we are just learning about her life. She is reminiscing on memories from when she was a kid with her best friend at the time. She's thinking about her really only real boyfriend that she had in college and how he just up and left. She's thinking about this coworker who was kind of the outcast of the office because he was old, was refusing to retire, and like creepy to the woman. He would still call them sweetheart, even though that hasn't been acceptable for the last like 15 years. I guess not that long. So she befriends them. They go out to dinner together. It's like purely platonic. But one of the things that they do is go to the shooting range. So for her birthday, he buys her a gun. And this is the gun she's killing her father with. On this road trip, she stops to visit some of these people, like her best friend from childhood, who she hasn't talked to. She really doesn't have any friends. She has coworkers, and they call her the Ice Queen. Like, she has no one, really. She is pushed everyone out of her life. She also goes and visits her ex-boyfriend from college to kind of see why he left. She's just kind of going for closure for her failed friendships and relationships. Along the way, shenanigans happens. Her car gets stolen, it breaks down, she crashes it. Nothing is going right. It is a road trip across country with zero planning. Not to blame, but girl, if you're a successful lawyer, don't you think you'd be a little bit more type A? Anyways, along the way, she picks up this hitchhiker who is like a 20-year-old. She identifies him as a crust punk who is hitchhiking to Superfund sites to photograph them. So, in case you don't know, a Superfund site is like a site where people had to leave because industry left the land unlivable, whether that be like nuclear waste or lead in the water. He doesn't really have a plan for what he's doing with these photographs, but he thinks of himself as this like environmental activist. And he is, don't get me wrong, but he's also like a little bit of an environmental terrorist, but only in the sense that he's harming federal vehicles and property. So they're like, that's a domestic terrorist. And it's like, no, he's putting sand in gas tanks. He's both the best and the worst type of person you will meet at your liberal arts college environmental science program. And I say this with peace and love because I was him. He is me in a past life. I fear I've been on this earth and out of college for 5 years. So my sparkle of activism for the environment has kind of left my eyes a little bit. And I no longer feel it is worth the energy to be so angry about everything all the time because that's not productive. Recycle and compost, though, and make informed decisions about renewable energy because solar panels on your roof is not saving the world like you think it is. And also, it's up to industry to make changes, not the individual. But anyways, did you know that it was one of the major oil people, like Shell or BP or one of them, I can't remember who, they are the ones who did the whole push for carbon footprint in calculating your own carbon footprint and how to reduce your carbon footprint. And they did that to take the blame off themselves and shame consumers into doing less so industry can continue to destroy the environment and people feel like they're able to do something to help when really it's a drop in the bucket. And I'm not saying that a million people putting a drop in the bucket doesn't do anything. I'm just saying that we're not putting our energy in the correct place. Anyways, maybe I'm still him. So she picks him up. They are going to the next Superfund site because it is towards California. She is like, I have 6 months to go and kill my father. I want to do it before I start feeling like shit, but I have time to get there. So she's like, yeah, I'll take you where you want to go. And he is just criticizing her every step of the way. Because when you are in that frame of mind that everything is bad and there's nothing you can do about it. So she is wearing like a fur coat and he's like, you're wearing fur? And she's like, no, it's faux fur. And he's like, so plastic, that's worse. And despite this, she is loving the attention and the company that he's bringing. So she decides to kind of chauffeur him around to a bunch of different Superfund sites. She will break onto the property with him to she'll like break onto the property with him to take the pictures and maybe perform some light terrorism. And then they'll drive to the next one. She is funding him throughout this, like buying him food, and he's barely eating anything because of his values. He doesn't want to eat at restaurants because he finds them wasteful. She describes him as only eating like trail mix from bulk stores that has been in his backpack tied up in handkerchiefs. So like you get the picture of this man. And they just kind of form this friendship as they do this road trip across the country. And she isn't telling anyone her plans to kill her father. She's just like, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to kill myself. And I will be happy knowing that my father is no longer on this planet. And that's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop because I'm not going to spoil anything. I told you like plot points, and some people might say that these are spoilers. I truly just finished this book maybe an hour ago. So I haven't had a lot of time to sit with it and gather my thoughts, but right off the bat, I'm thinking 3.5, 4. I love a book about relationships and people's perceptions of themselves and how other people perceive them, and those things being challenged. And that's what this book is about. This book is not about her killing her father. It is, but it's more about the relationships that this woman has had throughout her life, the lack of relationships this woman has had throughout her life, and then building this friendship with this man that she picked up on the side of the road. I would say this book is character and plot driven. I was excited to see what was happening next and who she was meeting next and where they were going next, but it was definitely heavily character driven. It wasn't like a no plot, just vibes book. There definitely was plot, but it was more about how this road trip built relationships and her reflecting on her relationships than being a book about a road trip. Overall, I would recommend this book if you are someone who's into lit fics. I think it was fun. It wasn't overly crazy. Our main character wasn't overly unhinged despite wanting to kill her father. So as a like weird girl lit fic lover, I don't think that this is going to fall in the crazy realm that some of you are maybe looking for. This book is not the unhinged lit fic that I sometimes go for. It's not going to be Big Swiss. It's not going to be A Touch of Jen, which was honestly more horror. It's not going to be Pizza Girl, but it's also sillier and more fun than a lit fic like The Long Island Compromise. Next time I check in, it'll be about Nevada by Imogen Binnie. I am 20% in and I am liking the story. I am struggling with the third person perspective that is being told through, but we will see. We will see, we will persevere, we will get through this together. Okay, it's the next day, and I finished Nevada by Imogen Binnie. Right off the bat, 5 stars. I loved every second of reading this book. I did a combination. I read about half of it on my Kobo, and then I also did about half of it on audio. I am in the process of refinishing my kitchen table, so I listened to it while I was sanding. Before I even get into it, I need to tell you to read this book. I thought this book was so good. I thought it was like a really fun exploration of the idea of like a trans fairy godmother, which I'll get into. It had so much heart. This book was either written or published, I can't exactly remember, but in 2008. And this book is set in 2008. And it feels like it's 2008, mainly in the way the online space is talked about. And oh my God, I wasn't really online in 2008. I wasn't quite like conscious enough in 2008 to be online. I was more of the like 2012 era on Tumblr. The story is about Maria. She is a trans woman in her early 30s, late 20s. She's about 4 years into transition. Right about the time she started transitioning, she started dating her girlfriend, who can't remember her name, but that's okay. They're living in New York. Maria's working at a bookstore, and she has worked there for many, many years, like pre-transition, and is just kind of stunted in her current life. She's stunted in the monotony of it, and then also like the trauma almost of being a trans woman. This book talks a lot about trans misogyny and the idea of passing and how trans people are looked at through like a cis lens, and how you never stop being trans even when you start passing as a cis woman. We're really in Maria's head as she is grappling with all of this and conversations about gender and the like severe dysphoria she feels that causes her to disassociate from like her relationship entirely. She's incapable of having serious conversation. She just fully shuts down. And fairly early in the book, her and her girlfriend get in a fight about this. This kind of starts to derail Maria, despite this fight being one that they've had multiple times. Because she's been at this job forever, she feels unfireable, so she just She's showing up late every day. She's leaving to go get bagels, just like disappearing, even though she's like not on break, which is something I support entirely, by the way. Except maybe not, because she does end up getting fired because of this. She reconnects with one of her friends, Piranha, who totally calls her out for only being her friend when something tragic is happening in her life, relying on her for support. And then once things are fine, she goes back to not really talking with her, not checking up on her. Maria is honestly like a bad friend. After losing her job, she decides to steal her girlfriend's car, ex-girlfriend's car, and go on a road trip. Part 2 switches to James' perspective. He is a seemingly cis man who lives in rural Nevada in a town that consists of people working at Walmart. He never really did good in school. He's a major pothead. And he's in this mindset that the only thing his life can amount to is working at Walmart until he becomes a manager. That is his life goal. He is the stoner that we all went to high school with who never leaves their hometown. He has a girlfriend he's been dating since high school who he doesn't exactly treat very well. He's not very present in their relationship. And his life is very much paralleling Maria's from right before she decided to transition. James is questioning his gender and has been for years, but decides he cannot be trans because he hasn't known from a young age. He still doesn't know. Maria ends up stopping at this Walmart that he works at, and he immediately clocks her as trans, despite the fact that she is passing as a cis woman at this point in her transition. She also immediately clocks him as trans and is like, oh, he's not ready to transition. He needs some boost. He needs some help. He's kind of excited by this because he lives in a rural Nevada town that, at least to his knowledge, doesn't have any trans people. And he doesn't really know about it despite living in the age of the internet. Apparently, he's not on Tumblr. So when she comes back to confront him and invite him to hang out with her, he is into it. He's like, I want to ask her questions about being outside the gender binary. And she's like, I want to talk to him about this. But this is all internal. They hang out for an entire day. Maria ends up sleeping over at his apartment, and they do not broach the subject of gender at all. And it's like awkward. The next day, he's Googling like how to ask someone if they're trans, and the general consensus is you can't. That's offensive, but he does it anyways. And Maria is immediately upset, but also excited to broach this topic with him. This is the whole reason she wanted to befriend him. She's not outwardly saying you are trans, but she's kind of asking leading questions that would lead him to answer yes. And if he's been questioning his gender and what that means to him and all this other stuff, like why he doesn't think he's trans, and invites him on this road trip to Reno to go gamble. When they get there, Maria is like mildly an alcoholic, and she immediately gets plastered, loses James in the crowd, and James just kind of decides he's not ready for this. He walks to this gas station, calls his girlfriend to pick him up, and the book ends. So these are spoilers, but not in a way that I think ruins the enjoyment of a book and the way a spoiler for a thriller will. This book is about the conversations around queerness and being trans and pre-transition and post-transition and how it can be all-consuming for some people. The author's note at the end of this is so important to this book. Imogen reflects on, what led her to write this book, what the goal of this book was, the different things that inspired her, the people that inspired her, the previous work she did that led her to writing this novel, and it was so good. But in it, she talked about the idea of a trans fairy godmother, someone who comes around when you're questioning your gender and pushes you towards making the revelations you have to do to be able to begin to transition and accept that as a part of yourself. She talks about how, at least in her experience, a lot of trans people, and specifically trans women, talk about how they wished they could have transitioned earlier. They wished that they accepted this part of themselves earlier so they were able to do this earlier. And this book kind of explores that idea and how these people wish they could have had like a trans fairy godmother who could have pushed them to making revelations that would have led them to transition earlier and, you know, accept this part of themselves. I also want to mention that in this book there is conversations about how the idea of transitioning and passing is a very like cis-normative way to look at the trans experience and how that's not, you know, the goal for a lot of people, how like non-binary people exist in general outside of the binary and maybe do not transition. She's kind of exploring this idea of what would happen if this trans fairy godmother did exist and did try to lead you down this path of enlightenment. That's dramatic, but you know what I mean. And how that doesn't work, how people aren't able to be pushed into this thing if they are not ready for it, and how people have to come to these conclusions on their own, and by extension how it's not fair to regret not transitioning earlier because there's likely a reason you didn't, whether it be safety or emotionally not being ready to, and how that's okay, and how things like repression can be used as a coping mechanism. And that's fair until this coping mechanism is no longer helping you and it's starting to hurt you. And that was my takeaway from it, my perspective. I am a cis woman, so I could be very wrong about this. But I thought that it was a very real and raw book. I do want to mention I did have a little bit of trouble with the third person perspective when I first started reading this, maybe the first 20%. And then I decided that it was like a little bit campy and kind of giving the vibe of a narrator on a sitcom, like Fleabag wise. And I know that Fleabag isn't third person at all, but the way that she would just like turn to the camera and start monologuing about what is happening right in front of her, that's kind of the vibe that this narration gave me. I don't know if that made sense. By the end, I really loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I feel like it really added to the not environment but feel of the story. I'm about 50% into Make Sure You Die Screaming by Zee Carlstrom. This book is about a non-binary character who remains unnamed and I believe is unnamed because they are recently out as a non-binary person and haven't come up with a new name that feels like it fits. This book is about this person going on a cross-country road trip to kidnap their father because their mother called and was like, your father's been missing for 2 weeks. I need your help to get him back. So I did not realize this is almost a combination of the two books I already read. This book is not as much about gender queerness as Nevada is, but it's still a little funny that they're like the two books kind of combined in a different font. This is a fun, quick read so far, but it does make me feel the same way The Guest by Emily Klein, I believe is her name, made me feel, where I am just like, oh my god, you're digging yourself a hole that you're not going to be able to get out of, and you're destroying your life for seemingly no reason in a way that is going to implode. And I'm like tense reading it. It's very effective. I hated The Guest because of how it made me feel. I do think I should reread it though. I think I would like it more now, but it just made me so tense. I'm probably going to finish this tonight, so I will check in tomorrow about it. Guys, look, I have both my dogs for once. Goose usually does not want to hang out when I'm filming because he's scared of the tripod and he doesn't understand why I'm talking to myself, but today he's hanging out. Anyways, so I finished Make Sure You Die Screaming. I finished it last night. I read 60% in one sitting before bed and went to bed a little bit too late, which happens to the best of us. This book was really difficult to put down. I really, really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought I had really good commentary on like queerness and gender queerness and conservative parents and Trump supporters, which is not what I expected from this book. So it was a really nice surprise. I am searching for that in every single book I pick up because Wake Up and Open Your Eyes was so bad. He's so cute. So Make Sure You Die Screaming is about this non-binary main character who is unnamed because they are newly identifying as non-binary and haven't picked out a new name yet, which I think is so fun. And their friend Yeevy's road trip, like 13 hours to go try to kidnap our main character's father. Their father is like known to just go off and do things. He gets hyper fixated on things resembling manic episodes and will just go off and like search for this thing that they are stuck on, whether that be like burying a shipping container to work as a fallout shelter in the future, or joining this niche cult Ekankar, which was such a fucking deep cut for me to read because no one knows about Ekankar. It's like this religious community that some may consider to be a cult. It popped up in the 70s, like during that time, and is not known really by anyone at all these days, and it's not prolific, and it's never done anything like heinous, so it doesn't come up. But I know about it because I lived next door to one of their houses when I was in college. Wild! Absolutely insane for that to come up in this. The reason they're trying to find their father is because their mother called them and was like, please, I need your help. Can you come visit me to go do this? She's living in Arkansas. They're like, sure, fine. I'm at rock bottom and I kind of have nothing better to do. And they're also feeling a little sad being so disconnected from their family. They haven't talked to their father in years since they got in a physical fight at either Christmas or Thanksgiving, like a couple years prior. And just feels disconnected from their mom because they feel like they didn't have a good... Along with this, they are an alcoholic. They just broke up with their boyfriend. They just got fired from their job, and their best friend had died of a drug overdose. Them and their best friend worked at this marketing firm, and they were incredibly successful. So when she died, they kind of lost it. The reason they broke up with their boyfriend is because he hit them in the head with a baseball bat, and are now currently living on a futon in an Airbnb basement with this woman named Yeevy. They have also taken a vow of radical honesty, which is what they blame for the downfall of their life. They steal their ex-boyfriend's car and decide to go drive to their mother's house, and Yeevy comes with them because she says that she's on the run from her ex-boyfriend drug dealer, which is part of the reason she goes, and then also is like, I think it would be fun. Despite being a disaster, our main character is like mildly responsible. They have $100,000 in the bank right now, so they know they can coast a little bit, supporting themselves and Yeevy. Yeevy, on the other hand, is a fucking disaster in a completely different way. She is also an alcoholic. She's addicted to these like Q pills and just does infuriating stuff along the way. So she doesn't have a license, and our main character is like too drunk and tired. Oh, also they're drunk the entire time they're driving. 13 hours, borderline blackout drunk. Insane. So they are too drunk and tired to drive, so they pull over, let Yeevy drive despite the fact that she doesn't have a license, which is not the most responsible thing in the world. I'm going to walk that back a little bit. When I say responsible, I mean they're driving as responsibly as you can be while drunk. They're trying really hard not to get pulled over. And they're trying really hard to just get to their mother's house. So they let Yeevy drive so that they can take a nap, and they wake up to sirens and lights behind them, Yeevy going 90, which is far above the speed limit, and Yeevy being like, I bet we can outrun them. And our main character being like, no, please, just pull over. So they pull over. They're like, we need to come up with an excuse. And the cop comes over and is like, where's your license and registration? And Yeevy breaks down into tears and is like, I'm sorry, I forgot it. I left in the rush because my grandfather's in the hospital and I'm just trying to get there. The cop seems like mildly sympathetic, but also not going to let them slide until their walkie-talkie goes off because there was a crash farther up the strip. So he's like, I have to go take care of that. Y'all are off the hook. And she just continues to do stuff like that. They'll steal from grocery stores instead of using our main character's debit card, and like decides to party with these random like 17-year-old kids they find working at a grocery store in a Motel 6. And our main character is like, I just want to go. Why do you keep doing stuff like this? This is infuriating. And Evie will be like, stop yelling at me. I'm your friend. Why are you doing this to me? God, I would have kicked her out. I would have kicked her out of the car. They eventually make it to their mother's house. Their mom is like, your father has actually been gone for nearly 2 years, and the reason I tried to get you to come here is because I think you need help. She staged an intervention, and is it the best to stage an intervention which requires an alcoholic to drive 13 hours? No, girl, you could have gone to them. But whatever, everyone at their own pace, I suppose. Our main character does not take kindly to this. They freak out. They act terrible to their mother. And their mother is not a saint. Our main character talks about being non-binary and to stop dead naming them. And their mom is like, both their mom and father are like conservative Trumpers, which is the cause of the physical altercation that happened. So there is tension in the relationship, obviously because of that. But it's seemingly not what our main character made it out to be. At this point in the story, it's about 50%, and you discover that our main character has not been as radically truthful as they have been portraying themselves to be, and is instead twisting the narrative to be the victim in most situations in which they're not, or exaggerating to make themselves a bigger victim than they are. On their way back, they get into a huge fight with Evie, and she threatens to walk home. And our main character is like, you cannot walk home. I'll get out, you take the car. So Evie takes the car, and our main character walks to this random bar, gets blackout drunk, starts riding this like mechanical bull, face plants onto the bull, and fully breaks their face. And luckily, one of their ex-coworkers is there, which is wild. They're in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, and very kindly takes them back to their mother's house. In this conversation with their coworker, he mentions that he called their like old other coworker to be like, hey, what is going on with them and their like best friend? And they were told that the best friend died by suicide by an intentional overdose. Before this, our main character was saying that they killed their best friend because they gave them the drugs. So this kind of like shatters our main character's perception of their fault in her death, and also adds to the unraveling that's happening. They get dropped off at their mom's house. It's like 2 a.m. and they're like, I'm not going to bother her by waking her up, so they sleep on the patio. They get woken up by this woman pointing a gun at them, being like, who are you? What are you doing here? And they're like, excuse me, you just woke me up. I'm not fully conscious. And they're like, I was hired by this woman's father, and pulls out a picture of Evie and was like, you are accused of kidnapping a minor across state lines. Her main character is like, a minor? Also, her name is Evie, and the private investigator is calling her like Grace or something. At this point, their mother comes out with a shotgun and is like, do not point this gun at my son. The private investigator is saying stuff about how Evie crashed the car and they can't find her now. The main character is like, what do you mean you can't find her? And is like, I don't know what else to tell you. So she leads our main character and their mother to the scene of the crash, and they're looking around for clues as to where Evie went. Eventually, our main character finds Evie in the trunk of the car, and we learn that she is not on the run from her ex-boyfriend drug dealer. The pills that she's been taking this entire time are, in fact, Red Hots, and she turned 18 last week, so they did not kidnap a minor. She's just on the run from her father, who she doesn't like. During this whole exchange, The mother's attitude around our main character's queerness changes a little bit. She starts referring to them as her child instead of her son. She asks what she should call them instead of their dead name, and just like showing a little bit of grace towards them. And this kind of just gives the idea that she is not this terrible person our main character has made her out to be. And also, it's hard to be a queer person with conservative family members whose beliefs like maybe don't align with your existence. That's also a very big part of the rift in their relationship. Earlier, when they were talking with their mother, we learned that the father had left like 2 years before to live in the woods with this like intentional dude community. And after Evie is found in the trunk, they run from the private investigator because Evie does not want to go back to her father and are in the woods where perhaps their father is living. Their goal was not to find their father, but they get lost in the woods, come across this crazy naked man who throws a net over them to trap them, and finds other people in this community. And they were like, hey, do you know this man? They're my father. And they're like, we keep the identities of the people in the community a secret. And they were like, please, and somehow convince them to take them to the community. They get there and are led to like the head honcho's hut. And it turns out the person in charge of this community is a family friend that our main character was told died of liver failure years before. And this man is also the first person who ever gave them alcohol at the age of 12. Of course, this person was destined for alcoholism. They're talking and they learn that their father had died like 2 weeks earlier of like a heart attack, but he had been living there for the past 2-ish years. We learned that this Thanksgiving fight was maybe not what they made it out to be. Their father, I think, was saying some dumb shit. I don't exactly remember and I can't quite find it. And our main character tackles him from across the table and starts just like beating the shit out of him. And both their mom and dad are crying and begging him to stop. It's not this fight back. And after this, it's not that the father stops talking to them, which is kind of hinted at earlier. The father still tries to have conversation, is texting them every day. And maybe not texting them the best things, maybe texting them about joining the Texas militia to hunt down sex traffickers and QAnon theories, but still trying to have a conversation. We also learn at some point that the reason they got fired from their job is because they attacked the boss with a pen. And then we later learned that they just threw a pen at the boss. So it creates this vision of our main character continuously exaggerating and making everything worse in their life than how it actually has been. Our main character also starts reflecting on their parents' conservative beliefs and how in the past they didn't claim to be liberals but were really proud of themselves for things like voting for Obama twice. You know the brand. And kind of comes to the conclusion that they fell for the propaganda. And that's going to happen to people because if you are middle class, lower middle class, the middle class is kind of dead in America, you are gonna believe the hope that Trump's rhetoric is, that he's gonna lower taxes, that he's gonna make it easier for you to find work, that it's not America's fault, it's the immigrants, and we need to stop the immigrants. And how these things can feel truthful and hopeful when you've been working your entire life and you've been told that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and that that's the American dream, is that anyone can make it. And you're trying so hard and that's just not feasible anymore. And you don't want to believe that this country that you love is a lie. So it's a lot easier to blame other people. And when someone comes along and says that they can fix all your problems and they know the solution to everything and you're going to become wealthy and successful if I am in charge, it makes sense that people fall for that. And our main character is reflecting on this, being like, my parents are not inherently bad people. They have bad beliefs and that's unforgivable, but I can understand where they come from. So the book ends when they go to bury their father's remains because this intentional community fed their father's corpse to pigs. Anyways, so they dig a grave and bury him in the grave with their father's remains. They also throw in a Denny's gift card, which is a memento from where they first came out as non-binary to their best friend who later died. And Yevie adds a postcard that she got from her mother, which is the last thing her mother ever sent to her. Her mother kind of just disappeared and left her with her father, who she doesn't like. And the book ends there. And it had a lot more emotion in it than I expected. And a lot of it was nuanced. It wasn't spelt out to you, it wasn't hitting you over the head. It was obvious, it was there, but it was definitely more subtle than some other books. And I appreciate that a lot more. It comments on a lot of these things like very intentionally, but it doesn't feel preachy. And that will take me out of a story so quickly. I know that it's good for some people. It just unfortunately does not work for me. So those are all of the books I read. So those are all of the unhinged road trip books that I read. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this one's a little bit shorter than my other reading vlogs have been, but we will see when it comes to editing. I feel like I've been filming for less long, but who actually knows? I really appreciate everyone who clicks on this video and watches till the end. Like, you don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. The fact that you guys care enough to watch an hour-long video sometimes, that's crazy. Thank you. With all that being said, I will see you guys next time.